Hi, I'm Gareth Green, and in this video we're going to be taking a very short musical idea and thinking about how we would improvise effective answering phrases to the given two bars or two measures. Now, why might we want to do that? Well, I'm an organist, and there's many a time I've sat listening to organists improvising before services or when there's something going on, and they kind of ramble from one note to the next and one chord to the next, and there's 5 beats in this bar and 7 beats in the next bar, and we keep going around the same thing over and over again, and we get completely lost. It doesn't have any kind of structure to it. And there are many other musical environments where one might be wanting to improvise for whatever reason, and it just turns into a little bit of a ramble, particularly when you're improvising a melody, because melody needs some kind of structure to it. You can't just keep churning out notes like a kind of musical diarrhea. Notes just keep coming and keep coming and keep coming. You've got to kind of think, well, okay, maybe that's a 2-bar, 2-measure phrase, or a 4-bar, 4-measure phrase. And instead of just rumbling another few bars or measures on top of that, maybe I can get my second phrase to respond to my first phrase. So actually learning to improvise answering phrases to a given phrase is a very good way of learning to structure your improvisation in a much more successful way. So I would say to anybody who's wanting to get better at this, whatever your musical background, this is a great place to get started. Just to give yourself 2 bars, 2 measures, and then think, can I improvise 2 bars, 2 measures from there that kind of give me a kind of call and response? That the second phrase is in some way responding to the first phrase. Now, there are a number of different ways in which you might be able to do that, but let's investigate, say, 3 possibilities. So here's my given phrase. It's a very simple musical idea. I'm not trying to harmonize it at the moment. I'm just thinking about that as a melody. Now, if you had that as a given opening, well, what would you do next? Because you don't want to just do something like this. Because it's boring, tedious, isn't it? And actually what I've just done doesn't respond to that opening phrase in any way at all. So what are the characteristics of the opening phrase? What do we see in terms of the rhythm? We've got this yum, bap, bap, bum. That's a rhythm that's got a bit of life, isn't it? And yup, bap, bum, bum in the second bar. We've got some notes going by step. We've also got some leaps. So a bit of a balance of conjunct and disjunct movement. So is there anything there that we can harness and use in the next 2 bars or 2 measures to make a response to the given phrase? One thing we can do is that we can copy the first bar again and then improvise a different second bar. So we've got this as the given. Okay, do the first bar again and finish off. Do you see that works actually quite well, doesn't it? So let's just jot that sort of idea down as one possibility. So here comes one option. So you see, all I'm doing is literally copying the first bar. That very closely unites the answering phrase with the given phrase, doesn't it? And then I could do what I've just done, which is this. And you notice what I'm doing now is that the second bar of my answer has got exactly the same rhythm as it did before. So the rhythm of this bar is identical to the rhythm of that bar, but this had a sort of upward shape and then just dipped down, whereas this one's got an entirely downward shape. That finished on the dominant, on the 5th degree of the scale. This finished on the tonic. So how does that go again? Here's the given phrase in black, followed by the answering phrase in red. you could decide, well, maybe I should just change the rhythm a little bit. So you could maybe do this. So the first bar is identical. The second bar we've already talked about the nature of, but this time the rhythm's just very slightly altered. Doesn't really matter, does it? But you might decide you want the same rhythm or a slightly different rhythm. The great thing about improvising it is once you're improvising, who's to say you're wrong? The only thing you might determine to be wrong is if you've got the wrong number of beats in each bar, each measure, because you're not counting it. And I think when you're improvising, it's good to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. Then you know you've got the right number of bars, the right number of measures, and you know you've got the right number of beats in each bar. So there's a possible response. Well, you don't have to have the first bar copied. And in fact, if you were going to go on and do something longer, you wouldn't want all of these responses to be doing the same first bar, the same first measure. So maybe you could kind of use the same rhythm and do something like this. So I've started with the same rhythm, but I've gone in a different direction. And then maybe I'll keep the same rhythm, but have some different notes. And I think the ability to do this both ways, to sort of hear the notes in your head, think, what do I want this to sound like? Can I reproduce those notes under my fingers? That's an essential skill for improvisation. But also kind of hearing it and thinking, could I write that down like I've just done? Because if you can write it down, it's something that you can then hear in a more concrete way. Okay, so I've given you an alternative strategy. So let's have a listen to the initial phrase followed by a different answering phrase. So the thing about that is that you consider here that the second phrase belongs to the first phrase. The rhythm is absolutely identical. But there are things about it which are a little bit different as well. We've got this rising shape, whereas we had a sort of falling shape. But then there was a little bit of a leap. Now there's a big leap to the same note. And then this was a kind of bit of an arch, ya ba bum bum, as this is kind of going ya da da dum, sort of slightly the other way, isn't it? So kind of it's got things in common, but it sounds different. Okay, so those are two possibilities. Let's come up with a third one that is more independent, but not so independent that it doesn't belong to what you've got. Because if you've got too much independence, then it doesn't sort of feel as if it's the same piece of music. If it's too similar, well, we're just repeating ourselves. So, how about we do something different? And what I'm going to do here is to kind of peak at the beginning of the second phrase. You might think, oh, why are you going up to top A? Well, I'm trying to peak at this point, and I'm going to do something slightly different. So I'm using some of the same rhythms, but you notice I've already used a dotted rhythm, so I've introduced a new rhythm there. And I'm going to do something different with the rhythm here as well. But it's not a zillion miles from the original. Okay, how does this one sound? Here's the original. So you can hear how that answers the original phrase, but in a different kind of way. We have this peak at the beginning of the answering phrase. And then to mitigate that big leap from C to A, I'm coming down by step. And this is all conjunct movement in that first bar. But I've introduced a dotted rhythm as well, which elongates the peak a little bit. And then in the last bar, well, I've got all these quavers or eighth notes, a rising third, another rising third, and then arriving back at the tonic. So in all of those answers, you know, we've ended on the tonic note. That's because the original 2 bars, 2 measures finished on the dominant note. But those are 3 possibilities. The first is the closest to the original. The third is the furthest away from the original. But it just shows you how many different options you have. Here's option 1. Here's option 2. Here's option 3. So in a way, the sky is the limit. But what I just want to do is to inspire you, hopefully, with a bit of confidence to say, let's just do this little exercise of taking 2 bars of music, 2 measures of music. You can write your own couple of bars, or you can lift a couple of bars from somewhere and just think, can I improvise another 2 bars, exactly the same number of beats in both the bars, that somehow provides an answer to the given phrase? Because this will begin to develop some kind of structured approach to improvisation on a bigger scale. So most people, when they get into this, start by trying to ramble on for 5 minutes, improvising something that goes all over the place and has no structure. But this is a great way to refocus and think, yeah, let's get good at doing this. Then you might be able to take a 4-bar phrase, a 4-measure phrase, and add another 4 to that. Then you might think, well, actually, maybe I could do the initial pair, then I could do another pair, and gradually you're expanding your piece and it's getting a bit of structure into it. So a good way of just building some improvisation skills. Well, if you've found this useful, let me direct you to the Music Matters website, www.mmcourses.co.uk. Click on courses and have a look at our keyboard harmony course. The keyboard harmony course is brilliant at really getting these improvisation skills moving. So just learning to work with chords under your fingers, harmonizing melodies, rehearsing particular patterns of chord progressions, cadences and so on, and just building your skills. So not only can you do melodic improvisation, but you can deal with harmonic improvisation as well. And it has huge knock-ons in terms of your understanding of chords that you're playing in pieces of music. It really empowers your sight reading skills, your musicianship skills, your oral skills. So I would recommend improvisation to anyone. And if you're a keyboard player, that keyboard harmony course will really help you make big steps on the journey. Lots of other things to look at on the website, www.mmcourses.co.uk.